So my whole idea was we would come to your table and then we'd ask the entire interview, but while being cracked, to be like, what do you think of and what do you think and it'd be like.
And as I've explained to you, Tim doesn't really understand.
Yeah, so we're
gonna get into it.
Yeah.
Get your earballs ready. Welcome to the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Take time to sit back and relax and enjoy the show. Here are your hosts, Greg and Tim.
So welcome to the Greg and Tim show. And you know what, Greg? It's a special occasion today because we have a first.
A
first returning full-length interview guest, and it's with one of our favorite people in the entire world,
100%.
Dan Chénier.
Dr. Dan Chénier.
Dr. Dan Chénier.
Yeah.
He is a chiropractor. He is a
just hit the file button in the bottom right there. The one that looks like a file. No. The one that looks like a file. No. The one that looks like a file. There we go.
Oh, well, we already...
Oh, don't skip ahead, Dan.
We've already had...
Dan, don't skip ahead.
I didn't see.
I smelled it too. Anyway, on that note, so Dan has graciously agreed to return to talk to us for 90 minutes.
I can't believe it. After the way you treated him last time outside in the snow.
And specifically about North American politics. The entire 90 minutes he has agreed to discuss in depth about anything Canadian American politics.
That's right. We brought him on specifically for his political acumen.
I'm just kidding.
So we're gonna cut it short, is what you're saying, for only 90 minutes.
Dan walked out on us in the first.
We have all weekend.
But I want to start out first. I've got a challenge for both of you guys. It's something that I know you might have already done this morning. But you make a water concoction in the morning. Do you still do this? Like where you make sea salt, apple cider vinegar, water?
For mine is just sea salt and water.
Sea salt and water,
yeah.
Okay. Sea salt, apple cider vinegar, and water with a little bit of lemon just to give it some sweetness. We want to
salivating.
We want to chug this, and first person to chug it all wins.
Are you going to inform me as to the benefits of this before or after we do?
Should we do it after? Should we inform the benefits afterwards, and we could talk about the ingredients of why?
Also, as soon as I think about these ingredients, because I've smelt them or tasted them in some form, the bottom of my stomach gets a little bit queasy. So is there any chance at all that this carpet becomes flavored with different types of particles?
I don't think so.
He's not saying no.
It's not my carpet. I don't know. I mean, Greg.
Will I spew?
No, you shouldn't. Okay. You should. There's not a lot of everything in there. It's just like a tiny bit.
And what does the winner get?
The winner gets to ask the first question.
But I want to ask. Okay, I'll win.
See, he's cheating.
Oh, it's just sea salt and apple cider. No, I was just checking the ingredients.
If he wins, can he ask the first question?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
You get a choice.
Have they been equally measured?
Yes, they have.
So what the concoction? I was just checking the concoction.
Yeah.
It's apple cider vinegar.
There is other stuff in it.
So just to clarify, it's not Bragg's, is it?
Bragg's
apple cider?
Yeah, I was going to ask for that clarification too.
You don't even know what
you guys know why I'm asking?
I don't know why you're asking.
So apparently, is it Bill Gates? I think Bill Gates. You guys know Bill Gates? This Gates guy?
Never heard of him.
No, never heard of this guy.
Apparently, he bought Bragg's apple cider vinegar.
And
so is that supposed to be bad?
So is that suspicious? I don't know. Why would Bill Gates want to buy? He's multi-billionaire. Why would he want to buy?
But don't billionaires want to buy? They want to get more money.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So it's been like a really good, reputable brand, right?
It has been
up until now. Yeah, Bragg's is very.
Okay, when did it get bought?
I want to say maybe a year or two ago.
Oh, don't worry. This apple cider vinegar is old.
It's old.
No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
What if you guys keep talking and I just start?
No.
So here's a couple of things. I don't know if this is suspicious or not. I'm just asking you guys' opinion on this. So a few years before that, he came up with a chemical, some kind of like a pharmaceutical grade preservative of sorts called apeel, which preserves produce for a long, long time, right? And I think it's author Michael Pollan says, you should never eat paraphrasing, you should never eat something that doesn't rot.
Right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Other than honey.
Because honey doesn't rot.
Right. It has a long
It's not supposed to
shelf
anyway.
life. Yeah. So, but it's naturally preserved, right? It's not laced with apeel or chemicals to preserve it. So you have a guy who's got apeel, which is known to preserve apples for a long, long time, keeps them nice and shiny, way beyond what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And then you have the guy who owns that. And then you have people who are lobbying saying, wait a minute, this is not right. Like we should know, at least that it should be labeled. If we're going to be buying produce, we should know if there's a chemical on it that's preserving it forever. Right. And so there's pushback, right, against this apeel product.
And here I am just wanting to have a fun chug-a-thon.
And then you have...
I'm gaining knowledge.
Then you have the same guy who owns this chemical that preserves apples for a long, long time. He buys an apple cider vinegar company, the most reputable one. He buys one of the most well-known apple cider vinegar, Bragg's.
Right.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
This is all Bill Gates.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Is he taking
Bill Gates has never steered us wrong.
Right.
Like, Bill, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show. You've never steered
Apparently,
us
he's a lovely human being.
Right. He wants to just populate the planet and make sure everyone's healthy and strong, right?
Planet or control the population of the planet?
All right, let's start this.
Wait, okay.
So
you guys have a choice. You have Yankees, Cubs, or Vikings?
With regards to what?
The cup.
Oh, the cup. Oh, okay.
And you get the other one. You've kept, there's 4 of them, so you've obviously...
Yeah, well, I got one
Are
for...
they equally, have you equally...
They are
proportioned
equal.
them? How did you measure them?
With a measuring cup.
Okay. I'll take the Cubs, please.
I'm giving our guest the first option.
What did you ask for?
The Cubs.
Okay, I'll take the Yankees then.
You'll take the Yankees.
Sounds about right, you guys. It's not full.
Oh, it's not a shot glass.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is a chug.
Oh.
You want to do it?
Okay. I'm a little scared.
Yeah, I'm just a slow drinker to begin with, so
It's
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
You don't have to win.
I'm not scared of the fast drinking.
Does anybody
I'm
want to
scared
stir?
of the flavor.
Anybody want to stir it back up?
I
Sure.
don't care. It's going to be bad either way.
yeah.
I know that. I'm sending myself psychological thoughts to be worried about it beforehand. I thought we were cheersing for a second. Also, I'm not sure cheersing is a is an ad.
the salt, right? You want to mix
Chin chin.
Beep beep beep.
Okay,
Salute.
ready? In 3, 2, 1. Holy smokes. You always win the chugathons.
Wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because I smelt the apple cider vinegar before, so I thought it was like I expected straight apple cider vinegar.
Right. So yeah, when you handed me the full cup, I thought, well, there's no way that's all apple cider vinegar.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it was.
I could taste the apeel in there.
Oh,
Just kidding.
the apeel. So
The thing is, I can't ask the question because then it would be the next question's logically. I don't want to ask it
okay,
because we have to.
I'm confused.
Well, the question would be now
Yeah.
how it's good for you, but I don't want to ask the question because I lose my question.
Okay, so don't ask the question. I'll tell you what else is in there. So there's a little bit of lemon juice in there, and there's a little bit of cayenne in there as well.
Nice.
So
And turmeric. I just want to say.
I didn't have any turmeric.
I just want to say turmeric.
You just wanted to
I
say
just want to say turmeric.
But there was a little bit of cayenne in there, and the cayenne is. I didn't want to tell you guys about the cayenne because I didn't want to like give it up early, right?
Right.
So it's just a matter of
nice.
some people can't take the cayenne and some people can. So
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure.
I thought the cayenne was very mild.
I couldn't tell you.
I can taste the ingredients that you listed there, but they're
Yeah.
it's nice.
and I didn't want to make it heavy because Tim's never done this drink before, and this is a drink that I used to drink every morning in the
Okay.
morning. So the reason why I wanted to bring that on was just because I know that you talk a little bit about this kind of stuff every now and again,
Right.
about the benefits of
Yeah.
apple cider vinegar, benefits
Yeah.
of sea salt,
Yeah.
Himalayan sea salt, right?
I've changed now because apparently, so I was Himalayan at one point, then I was doing the Celtic or Celtic. I'm not sure if it's a soft sea or anyway, sea salt and
The one with the C.
the one with the C. And then apparently it's high in heavy metals and possibly even microplastics.
Which one?
Well, both, but
Perfect.
yeah.
So
But-
now what do
so-
we drink?
So I drink it's called Maldon. But there are other brands also, but this one particularly is it's a sea salt, but it's
Yeah.
not it's I guess they test it for heavy metals and for microplastics and whatever. I'm not sure if they have a special harvesting technique or if it's from a certain part of the planet that just doesn't have large amounts of these toxins.
So do you find like everybody was on the Himalayan sea salt.
Yeah. Yeah, even I
And
used to buy Celtic or Celtic sea salt from some of my suppliers, my supplement suppliers.
Yeah.
And even they were saying in the last year when I'd call and place orders, they were like, they're like, yeah, good luck getting the sea salt. We're sold out. I was like, why are you sold out? I guess there's like a couple TikTok influencers that posted how good sea salt is for you. And like concoctions like what you just made. And then it goes viral, right? So then now these suppliers have a hard time keeping up to demand.
And in 50 years, we'll see that all sea salts were bad. Anyway.
But that's what I mean, though. So like you now like you think, okay, I'm doing something good for my body. I'm getting Himalayan sea salt. I'm getting the water, a little bit of lemon juice, like just to get the citrus and that type of thing. And then you find out, lemon juice is bad for you, or Himalayan sea salt has metals in it.
So I think it's important to stay flexible. Like that's one of the guys the one who recommended the specific brand of sea salt that I'm using now and listed the other ones that were known to be high in heavy metals and microplastics is Dr. Paul Saladino.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about him is the fact that he is flexible in that sense. And it's important, I guess, that we stay flexible. Same with Mercola. He was preaching one thing a few years ago, and now he's saying, oh, wait a minute, like carbs are necessary. To a certain degree, certain types of clean carbohydrates. And at one point he was saying fat for fuel and protein and micronutrients, and that's it. Like there's no place for carbohydrates, or you can get away and be really healthy without carbohydrates. Now he's saying, no, you can't necessarily thrive 100% without any carbohydrates at all. And same thing with Saladino. He went completely carb-free carnivore, which is strictly meat, for I think it was about 6 months, and he healed himself from autoimmune diseases. And then he realized, my electrolytes are out of balance, because when you're keto all the time, your kidneys secrete more of your electrolytes, more of your sodium and potassium, magnesium, all the trace minerals you get depleted. Okay. And those are essential for proper neurological function. So you don't want to get shaky and blood pressure issues and things like that.
Yeah.
And so now he's saying, carbohydrates are ancestral, but there are some that are more ancestral than others.
Well, it drives me nuts. And you talk about carbs and necessity. But I was just talking about this with somebody last week, where it's like, you see all these videos. Well, you need carbs, and then they have a big piece of pizza.
Right.
And you need carbs, and they have French fries. It's like, okay,
that's what I mean.
Some of them carbs are good, but you don't have to get them.
Some are more ancestral than others. Yeah.
So
a slice of pizza is an ancestral or
it's not exactly
pasta.
It's vital to your existence.
Well,
it's not at all. No,
our ancestors were not eating the pizza that we're eating either.
Well, mine did.
The flour is
That's
different.
right.
The ingredients are made differently.
Yeah. On that note, if you guys want to find, like, if you must eat pizza, or if you must eat,
I must.
He must.
Then you should go to DeLuca's.
He's a bit.
I was just there yesterday.
So you can get the flour that's straight from Italy at DeLuca's. Which
coffee? Isn't DeLuca's
they have coffee. They have amazing coffee. Yeah.
No, they have food.
It's a full food store. It's a full food store. Yeah. So they import a lot of things from Italy. So in Italy, apparently they have laws where they're not allowed to sell GMO wheat. Right. So the wheat that they use to make their pizza dough and their everything, their breads, their in-house pizza dough breads, pastas, all that stuff is all from the Italian non-GMO authentic wheat, which is very different than the wheat we have here in North America. In fact, there's even, I think, Paulo, one of the Lucas was telling me that Italy will import wheat from Canada, make pasta, but then they'll sell it back to Canada or US because they're not allowed to sell it in Italy because it's made with GMO wheat.
So we're getting.
So make sure you're getting
we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. This is all stuff we want to talk about, and really good stuff.
How do we?
And by the way, I have a great idea for our next interview. A bit of a prank. If we have 3 cups and they're that concoction, and one of them has pure apple cider vinegar.
That's a good idea
for our guests. Would it be funny? Anyway, but before we get into all of this,
so the point,
stuff,
the point I was making there when I went off on a tangent. Sorry about the tangent.
No, it's good.
But it was. Because not all carbs are the same, right? So the way I like to look at things in general is it ancestral or not?
Yeah.
And the more ancestral it is, probably the more likely that humans have adapted to doing well with it.
Yeah. Well, I know my ancestors were shooting a bow and arrow at a pepperoni deep dish pizza. I believe it's in one of the pictures I have.
Yeah.
No,
in the history book.
No, I have it in a movie with Sinbad. Anyway.
Shazam!
Shazam! It was in Shazam. But I was thinking about something when we were talking about getting you back on. So last time that you were here in our studio, we had fascinating discussion, and we delved into a lot of things, which we will again today. However, what I was thinking to myself is we all kind of think in the same general belief system. So everything we say is kind of yes, yes, and you're preaching to the choir for the two of us. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time pushing back for, let's say, someone who doesn't
Sure.
believe like we do. Play the devil's advocate a little
Yep.
bit, okay? So what I was thinking was, how would you respond to someone who would watch you speak in an interview format like this and say, Dan, you are a chiropractor. You deal with people's backs,
Mhm.
and that's your job. You need to, if someone has an issue with their shoulders, their backs, and you bring them back into alignment. What are you doing going into all these other avenues that you don't have sufficient schooling for? Why can't you just stick to your lane?
Stay in your lane. Yeah. So first of all, it's a common misconception that chiropractors work with the backs and the shoulders and the joints of the body. So our focus is on the spine, but the reason we focus on the spine is because that has broad body implications in that we're improving the function, optimizing the function of the central nervous system. So the spine is just the vehicle through which we're doing that. By adjusting the spine, we're optimizing the central nervous system function, which is, as you know, the communication between your brain and your body back up to your brain, which is actually, most people think of it, brain communicating with your body. That's only about 20% of the signals going through your nervous system. About 80% of the signals going through your nervous system are sensory information feedback loop going back up to the brain. So it's input into the brain and output in terms of what's going to happen. So it has broad body implications. Okay. So just to correct that about, well, chiropractors adjusting the spine, bad back, bad shoulder, right? So I want to dispel that myth in that, even going back to the birth of chiropractic, when chiropractic was discovered in 1895, maybe we talked about this in the first podcast. I can't remember. When it was discovered in 1895 by the man named D.D. Palmer, the first chiropractic adjustment was delivered to a deaf man who had lost his hearing 17 years prior. When it happened to be a janitor in D.D. Palmer's building, and he found out that the man lost his hearing when he was crouched over lifting something. He felt something move in his spine. And then from that day forward, he lost his hearing. He couldn't hear what they called the ticking of a watch or the racket of a wagon on those old cobblestone streets. And so he postulated that if I was to adjust this vertebra in the man's spine, his hearing should be restored. And lo and behold, it was. The second case was a case of heart disease. And heart disease back then, a little tangent here, but did you guys see the film? It was Paul Saladino's documentary on polyunsaturated fats. Anyway, so he goes into heart disease didn't really exist 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago. It just wasn't a really big thing. Like now it's like one of the first, cancer and heart disease are the number one killers, right?
Yeah.
Iatrogenic disease is also actually technically number one statistically, which iatrogenic means, iatro means doctor.
Okay.
Genic means beginning of.
Yep.
So caused by doctors. Okay. So just a little food for thought
Doctors
there.
cause the most deaths right now.
Deaths, not just right now. Like this has been in modern medicine.
Okay,
it's a thing. Yeah. So modern medicine mistakes are, if you look at statistically, it's and please anyone fact check me on this one if you will. But causes of preventable.
I told him to keep his phone on airplane mode because he
so
can't pay attention.
Causes of preventable death.
So what'd you say?
Causes of preventable death. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a leading one.
Okay.
So anyway, but and then cancer and heart disease are not far behind.
Yeah.
Is that just and let me push back a little bit on that. Like if I'm a medical doctor and I've been to school for 10, 12 years to get my degree and I'm a specialist or whatever it is, and I have yahoos like you telling me and no, I said I was going to push back.
Just pushing back.
Right? Yeah, pushing back a little bit. Yeah. Okay, I have not only chiropractors who don't stay in their lanes, but I also have internet doctors who think they know after Googling something for 5 minutes what I'm doing wrong that I've learned for 10, 12 years. You know, like what I don't know anything anymore. I cause all the deaths, so why don't we just get rid of doctors altogether?
What would happen? What would happen if we got rid of doctors altogether? Has anyone even ever asked that question?
Let me respond. Let me get back to the question and formulate it differently. Sure. Is there any place for modern medicine and doctors today in 2024?
Exactly what I was going to get to in terms of trauma and ER. Wouldn't want to be without them. Absolutely, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Over and above that, it's very questionable. It's very questionable.
So like surgical doctors definitely needed for like surgeries, like heart surgery
or you're in a car crash and you
Car
need to have your
crash.
body sewn up and put back together.
broken legs,
Yeah,
all those kinds of things,
orthopedic
right?
stuff. Yeah,
Cancer treatments.
I don't know. I can't. I'm not going to quote any
Yeah, no,
of
for
the
sure.
stats because I'm not sure about that. It's a losing battle. The more treatment and procedures has cancer rate have the cancer rates going downhill.
Well,
Are
you
they going down
could argue that
as technology improves?
you could argue that the food industry
Mhm.
is giving cancer, so the doctor and pharmaceutical industry can
Sure.
cure cancer.
And how does
Right.
how do pharmaceutical industries make money? How do they stay alive?
By having sick people.
But yeah. So if you're alive and healthy, they're not making money on you.
Yeah.
If you're dead, they're not making money on you.
Right.
But if you're alive and dependent on their product the rest of your life, then that's a gold mine.
So, and then the other
So
thing
you're right
too-
in saying maybe there's food. That's why I'm not going to speculate. I'm not speculating, but
No, for sure.
it's possible that we could get away with emergency room medicine and emergency surgery medicine
Yeah.
and have a really thriving society.
It feels to me that the medical industry, at least in Canada, will not do anything for you until you're further along in the. It's not proactive. in
It's
other
not.
words.
I mean, I think they're maybe trying to be. I'm not a medical doctor, nor do I pretend to be. So, just a
Yeah.
disclaimer there. What they're mandating, but we've seen sort of a push for, say, early detection,
Yeah.
and so they call wellness early detection. That has nothing to do with wellness.
Yeah.
There's nothing salutogenic about early detection.
Right.
Mhm.
So, early detecting something that's bad early on,
Yeah.
is that even better? They say,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is great because we can treat it early." So what happens if you treat it early? Are the outcomes really that much better? Or are you intervening too early? What if you had
What do
waited
you, what do you
another?
mean? Are you intervening?
Well, what if they hadn't? So a lot of people, for example, in Manitoba, a lot of people are waiting for months and years sometimes to get either a diagnostic procedure done
Yep.
or an actual procedure done.
Yeah.
And how often in that time frame, if they had the diagnostic procedure done today versus 6 months or 8 months from now, it's all of a sudden they go for the diagnostic procedure. They've been seeing me in the meantime and doing all kinds of other lifestyle habit changes. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can cancel that knee surgery or that wrist surgery or whatever it is, gallbladder removal, because it's 100% now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the scans come up going, oh yeah, it must have been a mistake because we're not.
We interrupt this podcast for some clarification and context.
Just to clarify and add some context to the question about the need for medicine. I'm not anti-medicine. I would not want to be without it. There's definitely a time and place for it. So I'm not discouraging anyone from seeking medical care when they need it. One of the problems with our system is that the vast majority of chronic disease is totally preventable through healthier lifestyle habits. Then we have a system which is totally focused on sickness, symptoms, and disease, which we call healthcare, when in reality, it's sickness care. So when you apply sick care to a whole society and call it healthcare and ignore healthy lifestyle habits, you end up with a sick society. So just to be clear, medicine is there to treat disease, and it's necessary. And what we've learned is that studies show that through healthier lifestyle habits, we can prevent and often even reverse chronic diseases. Now back to the podcast.
Does this go back to pain is not a bad thing?
Exactly.
Conversation we had before.
Exactly, right? So what do the symptoms mean? They mean stop, take inventory, do something different. If you can buy yourself enough time to do something, to take inventory and do something different,
Yeah.
I would contend that's a good thing. So I can, sometimes people are complaining to me, oh, the system is so broken. I have to wait 6 to 9 months to get this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's not such a bad thing in the end. Because maybe
Yeah.
it'll allow you to take inventory, do stuff different in your life. And maybe
I
you still need the procedure. I'm not saying you don't.
Yeah.
I had and sometimes you don't even get the diagnostic. So I have a family member who went into the hospital, which we still don't know what happened to them, whether something burst, whether there's a kidney stone, etc. Because nothing showed a CT or MRI. I can't remember what it was. But at the end of it, it had no. We were there for 6 hours. Really had no detection of anything, so we had no idea. Went and did I think it was coffee enemas, acupuncture, a few things, and now some of those things have. I think there were what do you call those things that are in the system?
Parasites?
Parasites that
Okay.
came up. 50 to 70 parasites came up,
Yeah.
right? So, but like you said, that might have not fixed the problem, but it might have, right? So
But what
there's
if
no
they had
detection.
found something at the time?
Yeah.
What if there was a kidney stone that was passing and it just it eluded the diagnostic scans
Right.
and it passed? What if there was some kind of invasive
Yeah.
strategy that they would have applied, left the person scarred and with limited function for the rest of their lives, potentially?
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not always so cut and dried as we got to intervene early.
Well, the issue is it measurable, and can you actually see them? That's why we don't have any actual mental health cures in Canada, because you can't measure it. You go in. I don't know if I talked about this before, but you go in for a broken arm. What happens? They put it in a cast. They say come back in 4 weeks. They open up the cast. They take a scan, and it's and everything is good in there. You can take the cast off, and you can go on with your life, right? The problem is with mental illness, and this is debatable. But there's no. They say, how do you feel? Here's your drugs. That you can't scan your brain to see this is where this is at. This is where serotonin is. Blah 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 blah. And see us in 6 months. So there's no way to measure it. So there's no way to try to cure it.
So at the end of the day, even if they can measure every single little speck of what's going on, at the end of the day, if I could help anyone to have more faith, confidence, and belief in their body's innate wisdom, then my job is done. I mean, it's not completely done. I can still help you more than that. But if I can just flip the script into, oh my gosh, there's a boogeyman and it's invisible and I can't measure it or see it, but it might kill me and my kids one day, and then motivate me out of fear to make decisions and expose myself or subject myself to some potentially invasive procedures or whatever medical procedure of the day is there, which might end up 10 years from now being pulled from the market because we know now it's dangerous. What if I had enough confidence in my body's own innate wisdom? So I often say, well, this is a quote from a developer of chiropractic: your body, your innate intelligence knows more in 1 second than every doctor in the world knows in a lifetime.
Right.
If people had that knowing and they didn't make decisions, health decisions, motivated out of fear, but instead out of confidence, wow, how different our culture would be right now.
Yeah. I'm thinking to myself as you say that, and I appreciate those responses. 100 years ago, there would be home remedies about, take things like cocaine.
Yeah. Heroin, cocaine.
Well, even before
DDT.
that, look at bloodletting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
So who's to say in 100 years all the things you're saying?
They're going to look back and go, wow, look how archaic that was. I mean, we used to spray kids. They used to spray kids for lice with DDT, like chemical warfare. They used to mist them with DDT to make sure they didn't have lice.
I want to ask one of Tim's questions.
So yeah, it's all that to say that, things that are the silver bullet today end up being, tomorrow's, laughing stock and the archaic barbaric stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff that I'm doing today with the work I'm doing, because I'm working with innate intelligence. I'm just working with allowing your body's innate intelligence to express itself more with less interference.
Yeah.
So the innate intelligence in you, it's God-given. Okay, it's not God, but it's God-given. God gives you your innate intelligence. It stirs your cells into life. So this cup has no innate intelligence in it. This is an inanimate object. Okay, there's nothing you can do to bring life to this cup.
Yeah.
There's nothing you do.
Some say that about Tim.
Well, as my wife says many times, I can be wrong.
Many times? All the time.
No, not all the times.
Are you right sometimes?
60-30.
Okay. So one of Tim's questions that he was going to ask that I'm going to steal from him is, people are talking a lot about stress these days, right?
Yeah.
So there's a pandemic of anxiety.
Yeah.
You can say, right?
Yeah.
So like everybody's anxious, everybody's stressed,
right?
People are taking stress.
Well, you
leave.
see like hockey players. I think JT Miller's one that from the Canucks that's taking some time off, and Patrick Laine took off. Like you have people take time away from.
Patrick Laine took time off when?
Last year.
Okay.
And
he went away with like he had a depression situation diagnosis.
Okay.
So,
but we see this, and of course, famous people just reflect everyday people.
Oh, you're talking about stress now.
Because they are an example.
They're in the limelight.
Apparently, they're regular people too.
Sure.
Which people forget.
Yeah, we're all subject to the same human needs.
Right.
But just in general, there's a pandemic of anxiety.
Okay, yeah.
Right now, right?
First of all, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Do you feel that there's more anxiety now than there was, say, even 10 years ago?
Have I observed it more in practice?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this last time. You talked about the doom scrolling,
Mhm.
right? And the endorphins that you're getting from scrolling
Right.
and that type of thing. So, other than our phones, would there be anything else in the world right now that you think is causing the anxiety?
Fear. People are making decisions based out of fear, and that usually leads to regret.
Okay.
So
Do you think it's just because you can have a feeling of stress because something is stressful,
sure.
and then you could have something wrong with your some of your things that are going off in your head that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
Right.
there can be
Right.
It's
physical
environmental stress
Sure.
versus just stress in general.
Right.
You don't know why it is. Right? I feel anxious. I don't know why.
Yeah. So I think the media, but that goes back to scrolling, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, to a certain degree, but the media in general has done a really good job at fear mongering.
Okay.
And the fear that I see being probably the worst is fear against an invisible enemy. Like what we lived over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
It was a perfect scheme. It's an invisible boogeyman that can kill you.
Let's back up here.
Yeah.
Scheme. Okay, you're the word scheme suggests in my
plan.
mind you're implying certain things.
Right.
Which are what?
I'm implying that it was that the message from the media, and I mean it's the evidence is there, the receipts are there. They were like parrots. You've seen some of those clips.
Yeah, where they're all saying
saying the same thing. Like it's a threat to our democracy, it's a threat to and it's all parroted the same thing. That's regarding other things,
Yeah.
but I can't remember what the line was, but there were specific lines that were used and they were identical from one news network to the other over hundreds of news networks. So what they call the legacy media, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
They were all parroting the same taglines.
Yeah, whether it was ABC, NBC,
right.
CBS,
Right.
CNN, all that
Fox,
kind of stuff.
CNN, they're all.
So do you think that if we got rid of our phones today,
Would it be less stressful?
would we have less anxiety in the world?
I think we might. I think part of the media message is disconnecting us even further from this trust that we have in our body's innate intelligence.
Here's my opinion on the media message.
Mhm.
The media has always tried to do the same thing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. The only difference is you have social media,
We
which
have more
puts
access to
all of the information thrown at you at once. That the media is no different. I always say a story about the Titanic sinking, and the newspapers, because the media at the time was the newspaper, brought up articles because they couldn't get the information right away that everyone survived because they wanted to sell a newspaper.
Right.
They all survived. Why? Because they wanted to make money. The media has always been the media, which has always been the media.
But the difference today is that you can get the media 24 hours a
Yeah.
day.
You get
more accessible.
bombarded with it all
More
the time,
accessible,
and if
yeah.
you're scrolling, you get it
In Canada, so
And I'm pretty sure they're doing a better job at like subliminally
changing your
programming.
minds.
And that's why the Canadian government tried to save us by not having all
So
those.
I was going to ask, that
By
was my
having what?
next question. So are you, so we're gonna talk one political thing here right now.
We're gonna probably couple because it's gonna go into something.
Going to tangents.
The fact that the Canadian government is the reason why Facebook and Meta have removed the news from social media. Do you think that was a good thing then?
That our legacy media is no longer on social media.
Yeah.
Well, I don't pay attention to legacy media. In fact, sometimes I do,
Yeah.
and my wife's like, "Why are you putting that on right now? We don't listen to that stuff, remember?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just want to see what kind of propaganda they're pumping out, so I can know. Well, that's propaganda, and the opposite is probably true."
Yeah.
So, from my perspective, it's like whatever. But yeah, it might be a good thing.
I wonder if like our government's plan to censor, because Bill C-17, I think it was like the censorship bill, right? Like to, hold people accountable to what they're putting out there in the media and like make sure that it is not false, essentially, which means that they agree with it. The government agrees with it.
Right. So,
But Facebook basically has said, well, then if we're going to be in trouble because certain media puts out certain things, we're going to ban all media. Do you think that kind of backfired in the government's
probably,
face,
yeah, it looks like it.
right?
Yeah.
That's my opinion right now of it, right? So, like, I did appreciate being able to see news and weather and sports and everything in my
In your
feed.
Yeah, right.
Not like obviously not all the news,
Mhm.
but like I would pick and choose. But now I can't see
Yeah.
any of it, and I
Yeah.
can't even share any of it.
Right. Yeah, I think you're probably right. It probably did backfire to a certain degree. But what's more alarming is if they, take it further and really start to quote unquote censor what they consider misinformation or disinformation. Basically, it's just anyone who disagrees with the government narrative.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that's not what we are
Is that
saying.
a bigger
so-
issue? And we apologize for going too much into politics, but it kind of blends.
No,
a little,
free speech,
It
I mean,
blends a little bit,
yeah.
right? Is that more of an issue with left wing governments? Let's say now that Trump is president, and assuming Pierre Poilievre is
Mhm.
prime minister in October. Are we in better hands for the next 4 to 5 years or 4 to 8 years, whatever it is, in North America?
It would appear that the liberals and the Democrats were the ones who were really pushing for censoring free speech. And the censorship of free speech happens to be the wet dream of any tyrannical government. And it's essential for a tyrannical government to thrive. So first, they have to take away your freedom of speech so that they can just promote their agenda and their propaganda. And secondly, they have to disarm the population. I can't remember which country it was back in the 1940s, which one of the European countries that every household had to have a firearm for hunting, potentially in the case of an
Wild
emergency.
animal and stuff.
They had to be able to hunt and protect their household. So every household had to have a firearm.
There's a bylaw.
And was it Switzerland or
I don't know.
Sweden? Anyway, one of those.
Don't say Germany, but
And it was, and that happened to be one of the only. And this is something that I heard in a speech given by a Holocaust survivor. She was maybe in her 80s or 90s, and she gave about a 30-minute speech, and it was beautiful. Basically, her message was to the American people was, hold on to your Second Amendment, because that's the only country that wasn't invaded by Hitler back in those days, was because every single household had a firearm.
Okay.
They say you can vote your way into communism and into a fascist government, but your children and grandchildren may have to shoot their way out of it.
Yeah, we just don't have time to get into the arms question.
No, and that's not the point I'm making.
But I know I'm understanding what you're saying, right? Is like voting.
And I'm not saying anyone should shoot anyone.
No.
On that note, disclaimer.
It's the idea is having guns.
Can we run a disclaimer on the bottom here?
Yeah. The whole discussion is quite fascinating. Is do guns solve more issues than they create? Statistically, I'd have to see that. But anyways, that's a different discussion. Before we go into, and I have some really great questions for you.
You do?
We both do.
I thought maybe you just had great questions.
Well, I haven't seen yours. So two things. Number one, just on a lighter note here. You said your wife said you weren't allowed to.
I shouldn't say I wasn't allowed. She said, "Remember, we decided we were not
Right.
listening to the news anymore."
So is it? Do you each put on a leg, or does she wear the pants?
Wow. And there goes Dr. Dad. He just left, he just left the room.
I just thought of it.
Yeah. Honestly, like when we get to the later part that we haven't really told Tim about, when we start doing the adjustments, you are more than welcome to adjust him other ways.
So what happens is we do the talk, and it's great to have the tangents. We love, and this is what made the last interview good. I just periodically like to throw in a couple of things here and there just to kind of lighten the tone, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I had a question. While you're thinking of that question,
oh, you wanted to?
You really want to know, or you're just asking?
No, I really want to know. But while you're thinking of that question, also I don't know if we asked you this in the last one, but I have this idea of you singing and playing a guitar. I don't know if you do that, but is there a special skill that we didn't talk about that you have that has nothing to do with chiropractic?
My uncle sings and plays guitar.
Okay.
Jake Chénier. You guys heard?
Yes.
The famous. That's my uncle.
I do know.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is something? What's a hidden talent?
So my hidden talent?
Yeah.
I really like to kite surf. That's sort of my hidden hobby or talent.
You kite surf?
Yeah.
Explain.
So it's kind of like windsurfing slash wakeboarding, except it's a giant kite that you're connected to.
The back of a boat.
No. There's no motor. So
kites are.
It's-
So you're like on like
you're on like a wakeboard looking type of board
and
slash surfboard.
When you hit
and
a wave, it can go pretty
you
high
can-
in the
yeah,
air.
you can. You don't even need a wave necessarily because you're connected to a giant kite that's somewhere between like about 9 to 10 meters in size, square meters, and
Do you do that here in Manitoba?
yeah, Manitoba is really good for it. Lake Winnipeg's really
because
good.
of the wind.
Yeah, because it's really big and it's
You just only
flat.
have a few months to do it, I suppose.
It's you can do. A lot of people will do it in the winter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm more of a water man myself, though. I hardly ever do it in the winter.
So you can do it in the snow.
You can, yeah, for sure with skis or snowboard. A lot of people, most people do it on the snow because it's a little more accessible, right? You got
Right.
more months out of the year where you can do it.
Yeah,
It'll hurt
And
more when you fall, though.
Yeah, it probably hurts more when you fall,
Just don't fall.
and yeah, and it's colder.
I didn't know that about you. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's
why we
So I
haven't
haven't
watched
done
yet.
it as often lately because it's just busy with the kids' activities and whatnot, and
Yeah.
you got to have proper wind. And on the day where you're at the
Oh, it
lake,
sounds like a lot of
so,
fun.
yeah.
I wouldn't mind.
I used to
trying
do it a lot more when it was back in the days when I didn't have kids or they were really young. I could choose like, okay, if it's windy, I can just up and go and,
Yeah.
and head to the lake. Whereas now it's like when I'm at the lake and it's windy, and I pop the kite up and I go. Or if we're
Yeah. So
So
traveling,
it has to be a bit windy.
I like it when it's windy. Yeah.
You have to be pretty good at it too. Like you can't just jump
it's-
on one.
No, you can't just jump on one. You need some instruction. So the difference between that and say windsurfing, you've probably jumped on a windsurfer before, or even just like a fun board or something. No, but anyway,
No.
I've
so
done any of it.
so windsurfing is a lot easier in the sense that anyone can jump on it and pull the sail up and just kind of have at it and play around with it for the day and eventually kind of get the hang of it. Whereas the learning curve for kite surfing is probably shorter than like actual real windsurfing where you're really planing.
Yeah.
But you do need a little bit of instruction. You need someone to kind of help you launch and land and help you to learn the dynamics of the kite. And then, but once that's down, then it's pretty straightforward. It's like riding a bike, as they say. It sounds cliche, but like riding a bike where it's like if someone from another planet saw you riding a bike, they'd be like, what, that's impossible. 2 wheels and he's staying up. But it's really not that big of a deal.
Going back to my guitar example, I used to play guitar a little bit, and it's funny because if you look at it, if you've never played a guitar, same idea. To play with one hand and finger, it just looks like
impossible,
it's impossible.
yeah.
But when you actually learn how to do it, it's like second nature.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I've never been able to play guitar. I've never learned, and I tried.
I know
guitars.
C chord, G chord, D chord, and E minor.
So you can play a lot with just a few chords, right?
Yeah, you
My
can.
understanding,
Actually.
I think a lot of songs are only a couple.
We have a
chords.
joke that most songs are 3 to 5 chords,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
As long as you know them.
There's
dude.
one song that we did at church. It was like 3 notes, and our lead singer was like, "It's 3 notes." It's a great song. Anyway,
It is. It's your favorite song.
it is my favorite song from that group.
Yeah.
Do you want to go in to show that video and go into that topic?
Today I'm comparing American versus Canadian Fruit Loops because I saw a video where they showed the difference in color in both of these and which one tastes better. I'm going to do a blindfolded taste test. Let's open the Canadian one first. Okay, yeah, that looks like what was in the video. Muted colors, not too vibrant. See the American one. Oh my God. Whoa! Holy hell, look at that. That's crazy. This looks like candy, and this looks like oatmeal. Of course kids want this. Both made by Kellogg. What is making that color difference? Well, the American one uses food coloring, like red 40, yellow 5, blue 1, yellow 6. And the Canadian one uses fruit juice for coloring. Watermelon juice, blueberry juice, Guido juice. Other than visual, does it cause a taste difference? We're gonna find out. I'm gonna blindfold myself. Here we go. It's beautiful. How could something so beautiful be so bad for you? Yeah, definitely not as appetizing. Just looking at this, which one would you choose? Milk. All right, let's blindfold. Here we go. Let's mix them up. Losing them. I gotta sing the song and forget. Here we go. Let's go with this one first. That's good. That's really good. Let's see this one here. No, not nearly as strong of a Fruit Loops flavor. Not at all. Let's go back. Oh, yeah, that hits you. That's it. I mean, this has to be the American one, right? Because visually, it would taste this way. Here we go. The moment of truth. This one is the better Fruit Loops. But which country is it from? What? No way. It's the Canadian one. What? I cannot believe that. Are you kidding? So not only is the Canadian one healthier in the sense that it doesn't use food coloring and blue 42, but it also tastes better. America, get your together, man. It doesn't taste good. This is insane. If you're American, get over here to Canada. Grab yourself some good old-fashioned Fruit Loops.
So, first of all, so that obviously Fruit Loops are ancestral foods.
Your ancestors used to hunt for Fruit Loops.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely would, one thing at a time. They would pick them off trees and something like little things.
Yeah.
Just talking in generalities as far as American versus Canadian food, but using this as an example, do you think that this specific example, why would a company, the same company, mind you, in Canada, the U.S., have those differences? Why would an American company, that branch of Kellogg's, have a more vibrant looking product?
So I don't know. However, we have to question, is it that it would be less expensive to produce, more profitable?
Cost, yeah.
Is it that if we want to go down some rabbit holes and speculate, I'm purely speculating.
Yeah.
Is it that they want to make Americans less healthy, thus keeping them dependent on pharmaceuticals the rest of their lives?
No.
Do they want to create issues, even mental issues? Because those, like red dye, kids with attention deficit disorder, red dye has shown some really bad effects on things like ADHD. Yellow 6, I think it was. It's another really big one. But the nice thing is there's a guy named RFK Jr. in the United States of America who is going to be taking this kind of stuff to task, taking these big food, big pharma, etc., to task on some of these things.
And RFK is going to be in Trump's administration, I believe.
He's in their. He's going to be part of their.
It looks like it.
And so he's a controversial character, and people on the left say that some of the things that he puts out there information-wise has factual errors.
So I've read a lot of his work,
Okay.
and he names names. Like in his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, it's a really thick book, and he names a lot of names in there. And some really detailed accusations, if you will. And he's never been sued once for defamation or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure he has his facts all checked out.
So there is the one thing he was talking about. I think it was Fruit Loops itself. He was saying like Fruit Loops in the United States has 17 ingredients. Fruit Loops in Canada has 4.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then he got fact checked on that, and it was
They were
very similar in ingredients.
Okay.
It was just they were different in
Different
But he was
ingredients.
shown to be incorrect.
Okay.
in that.
But
So they
I
did
think that
fact
he
check
was-
him.
I
So
think
they-
he was
so I think-
also misquoted
Mhm.
because I didn't look right into it,
Right.
but it could have been a misquoting of like
Maybe it was
Canada has 4
bad ingredients.
non-natural
right.
ingredients and the United States
Right.
has 17 non-natural.
So at the end of the day, they do look and scrutinize his every word very, very carefully because they're
Because of where
looking
he
for him
is.
to slip up. And there are
Yeah.
people that we know who have been who they tried, the media and pharma and et cetera, all these big players, big lobbyists have tried to scrutinize their every word.
Yeah.
And so if there was anything that was out of line, they get called out on it instantly, right? So
Yeah.
if it's just, he was, misquoted on a few words about Fruit Loops, so be it.
Yeah.
But there's
I want to kind of get
things.
out of the political stuff. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question a little bit.
Okay.
Not necessarily
Tim loves this stuff.
political in general. It's not really political. It's more society as far as country versus country. So I want to really talk about Americans versus Canadians or Europeans, like we were talking about before. I find Americans tend to either be in two camps, very wide, diverse of camps. In one camp are the people who take extreme ownership, that everything they buy is natural. They're taking supplements. They're at the gym every second day. Or on the other side, they just don't care, whatever's cheapest, because we only have a certain amount of money. And you can fool those group of people all of the time if you have flashy, colors of Fruit Loops. And they'll buy Fruit Loops because it's cheaper, right? It doesn't matter that it's got a ton of sugar or all those things. And I find Canadians are can tend to be more in the middle. As far as do you find that to be true, or in general in North America?
So first I want to say, you mentioned Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
That's the title of a really good book, actually, by Jocko Willink. He's like a badass Navy SEAL or badass former Navy
I
SEAL.
think I just bought it for my daughter.
Did you? Yeah.
I think I bought a 2-pack.
It's great. Okay. So, and the theme is extreme ownership, taking extreme responsibility for things as a leader.
Okay.
So you're a leader for your own health, and you're a leader in your family, you're a leader in your business, whatever it might be. You take 100% ownership and 100% responsibility. So I think that's what people need to do for their health. And whether they're Canadian or American, they need to take extreme ownership. And those are the ones that are going to see the best outcomes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I haven't interviewed I lived in America for 5 years in the South in Georgia, but I can't speak to every American. And statistically, I don't know if they're more responsible or less responsible, or if we're more middle of the road or not, or if we're more indoctrinated, maybe is something that I've kind of seen lately.
Where do you think food in general falls into mental illness?
I think it's a big player for sure.
In terms of like you
So-
said the red 40.
Yeah, so things like that are really obvious, okay? But then there's the whole gut-brain axis, which is being researched and talked about a lot more lately also, which is basically you have the vagus nerve, which is the biggest one of your cranial nerves that
So
travel.
what was it called?
The vagus nerve.
Like Vegas?
Think of
like
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas?
It's spelled a little different, but vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. So it comes out of the brainstem. It comes out just in front of the atlas, which is the top bone in your neck. And it comes out of a small opening on both sides in your cranium. And it comes out and it travels right in front of the atlas. And then it goes down and then it branches off around the clavicles and first ribs into the entire organ system. So they call it it's nicknamed the wanderer because it wanders through the whole visceral system, the whole organ system. And essentially, sort of in a nutshell, in a really rudimentary explanation, because I happen to be certified in how to assess and influence the function of the vagus nerve.
Okay.
Within my chiropractic realm, okay, scope. But to make a long story short and not get too technical about it, basically it puts the brakes on the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight response in the body. So one of the big things that it does is it puts the brakes on that. So when there's a stressful event, we talked about stress earlier, when there's a stressful event that happens, usually it's one of three things that happens. And it's either fight or flight or freeze. So ancestrally, picture, say, an antelope running through the field and there's a lion in the vicinity. Well, it'll fight or flight. It'll run, right? It's not going to fight. It's going to run. It's going to flee. And if it doesn't make it, at last resort it's going to freeze. And it's sort of an autonomic response where once the lion sinks its teeth into its body, it'll go into freeze mode, not consciously. It's a subconscious response. And a part of the vagus nerve will light right up, which is the freeze response. And so basically the lion, which is not a scavenger, it's a hunter of live prey. It's like, oh, what's this dead animal in my mouth? Potentially spit it out and the antelope might live to run another day. So that's sort of like the underlying response between fight, flight, or freeze, and humans have that three-pronged response as well, and they are all connected to the function, how well your vagus nerve is functioning, whether it's dysregulated or not. And if there's enough stress, either really big stress or just repeated stresses, and the body's not adapting effectively, a person may stay in a subtle fight or flight response or a subtle freeze response, even not full blown like where you're passed out on the ground.
Yeah.
But when we palpate people's spines and we do our assessment, I do my assessment, I can tell whether a person is stuck more in the fight or flight response or freeze response, and different parts of the body may still be connected in the tissues, may still be connected to a fight or flight response. The rest of the body may be functioning okay, or a part of the body may be completely disconnected, maybe in that freeze response, or the parasympathetics might be just online, just the way they're supposed to be, and there may be a nice balance between those states. But you can't be in one end of the spectrum and the other simultaneously. You can't be deep in digesting. What did you have for lunch today?
I had chicken.
Deep in digesting your chicken with enzyme activity and proper peristalsis, etc. And there's a lion right next to you or a bear right next to you about to eat you. It's one or the other, right? And at that point, which one is it going to be? Ancestrally, which one are we wired as a priority? Get away from the bear.
How do you find my vagus nerve?
Yeah,
is a roaming nerve
to the whole visceral organ system, and the postural.
How
muscles.
large is it?
It's long.
How
it's
long?
Really long. I don't know statistically, but it's long.
How would you find that on me?
So, I have ways of assessing for it. I'm not touching the actual nerve itself.
Right.
You have skin on your body. You have other things, right? So you have connective tissues, but I have other ways of assessing
through the back of your neck and stuff like that,
I'll
right?
tell you more about that when I work on you later. But The point is, you're never going to be at which end of the spectrum. Which end should you be in if you're digesting that sandwich or that chicken, and there's a bear that's about to eat you? Which is the priority? Fight or flight, or rest and digest?
The fight
or
the
flight. Yeah,
fight,
of course,
flight,
of
fight,
course.
flight,
So we're wired that way ancestrally. That tends to take a little bit of a priority, right?
Yeah.
If you hear a crack in the jungle or wherever ancestrally, what if it's a saber-toothed tiger? So you kind of be vigilant. You're gonna have good head movement and good peripheral vision, so you can see what's going on around you. Everything's safe. Okay, go back to digesting that chicken or whatever saber-toothed tiger that you just slayed. So I usually recommend that people don't eat when they're in that state, because you're probably not going to have the best digestion.
Yeah.
Or if that's the only food available to you, then I suggest you don't eat either.
Anyway,
so vagus nerve, fight or flight. What was the question again?
We were talking about what the question before that was. How does food and what you intake into your body affect mental health?
So there's the gut-brain axis, and so a bear in the vicinity can affect your stress response, and so the vagus nerve can affect everything from mood to your posture, to your digestion, your immune system, etc. Your heart rate
in your food. Do they affect your vagus nerve?
So that's what I was going to get to next. Is that sugars sort of indirectly, but the different foods will support or hinder different gut bacteria, and your gut bacteria. There's a direct connection through the vagus nerve to your brain.
Okay.
So it's like basically that's the direct link between what they call the gut-brain axis is through the vagus nerve.
Okay.
So yes, there's a big implications between food and in various different ways. One is through the gut-brain axis, through the vagus nerve. And I'm sure there are other mechanisms of action as well, physiologically, based on the foods that you eat, whether it's red dye number 40 or sugar or processed foods, chemicals, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer, not everything, but if you changed your diet to eat way less refined sugars, cut down on your carbs, eat natural foods, not food that's
like single ingredient foods is what they call it.
I'm a firm believer that most ailments either can be cured or the symptoms can be limited.
Yeah, so you'd see big changes in people's status for sure. If we had nothing but what they call single ingredient foods, so you can put together ingredients in your dish and make a food like that, but not like buying it off the shelf where there's 5, 6, 10, 15 ingredients already in there. Then that's a processed food, right?
Which is not to mention the other issue that North Americans have. I have an uncle who is from France, and he cooks with carbs and things like that. But what he says is, listen, when I make a meal, like you, Canadians, Americans, North Americans have these massive meals, and we talked about we're famous for appetizers. I made a joke about the food before we eat the food, which is heavy laden with huge amounts of carbs, starchy carbs. The amounts that he would have at a dinner, they have many small meals, but they're small, right? They're not huge.
Yeah, I'm sure portions are different. So here's the thing. I mean, you talk a lot about carbs, and yes, carbs should be limited and healthy carbs, right? So ancestral carbs, Paul Saladino, to quote Saladino, healthy carbs would be fruits and honey. Those would be healthy carbs. For someone who's metabolically fit, they can tolerate those carbs. If someone's trying to reverse a metabolic condition like type 2 diabetes, then they'll probably have to limit even those carbs.
I was watching a documentary. It's funny. Sorry, I cut you off here, but I was watching a documentary yesterday about Tom Hanks, and because he has to change roles in things, he had to get really heavy in the movie Elvis. And so a lot of these movies where he's got and then for the one where he was stuck on the island, where he got really he lost a lot of weight. So he's always been up and down. He actually developed type 2 diabetes because he had to change his diet so many times, limiting, increasing.
So he abused his insulin receptors, which is what type 2 diabetes is, where, especially if you're eating all the time throughout the day. So there's a few things. Carbs is one thing, and healthy carbs and not healthy carbs is another thing. And then there's how often you eat, which is really hard on the insulin receptors as well. How often you exercise or don't exercise, when you exercise, those are all things that will impact your insulin sensitivity. And that's a really big thing for longevity. You see all the experts that are talking about longevity, that talk about insulin sensitivity. It's a really big factor. So now, but moving forward, most of those experts that talk about insulin sensitivity, they'll still tell you that they would rather eat a tablespoon of raw sugar than they would a tablespoon of polyunsaturated seed oils or vegetable oils. That's how damaging these oils are.
Mhm.
So they're very, very damaging. They accelerate obesity, type 2 diabetes, and everything else that goes along with that, heart disease, cancer, etc., inflammation in the body in general.
Yeah.
So because what happens is your body can metabolize the sugar, which still poisonous, but at least your body can metabolize it. It doesn't necessarily become part of your cell structure. Whereas when you eat fats, you want to really eat healthy fats, saturated fats, and the healthy ones. The polyunsaturated fats and the seed oils, well, all the fats in general, they'll become your cell membranes. So your cell membranes are made out of fat. It's a lipid layer. And so if you have a fat that you've been consuming that's very oxidative and subjected to oxidative stress and inflammation, like seed oils and vegetable fats, those ones tend to be really inflammatory for your body and promote type 2 diabetes, insulin sensitivity, etc. So that's really something that hasn't been getting as much attention as sugar. Sugar for the last number of years, people are saying how terrible it is. But way back in I think it was in the I can't remember what years, but back in the 70s-ish, Ansel Keys, he was a guy that was hired to do studies on fats and heart disease. And he had these completely fraudulent, bogus studies that he did. Now we know it's proven they were bogus studies and they're fraud. He fraudulently did it. I'm not sure if he was paid for by the agricultural industry or grain industry, but basically saying that saturated fats cause heart disease and polyunsaturated fats, grain and seed oils were good for you. So then canola started emerging as a big thing. Back in the 80s, and turns out it's one of the worst things. You'd never eat it. They have to deodorize it before you can actually even tolerate the smell of it on your table. You would never eat it in its raw state. So they have to. It's highly processed, highly oxidative, and
but it just goes to show that like what you learn today can change very quickly, and who's funding the studies, who's funding the investigations. And
Well, and we talked about this in another episode. I always use the example of milk, right? In the 80s, got milk, right? Well, do we really need milk as a source of valuable calcium, or is it because farmers need to have us buy their milk?
Well, and especially the processed milk, right? Yeah. So now it turns out, again, I always go back to, let's just look at it ancestrally, where what hasn't changed in millions of years is, well, the people used to drink milk, but in its raw state. Yeah. And did they drink it by the glassful as adults? I don't know.
How do you think the first person that found milk found it?
He's saying anyway, there's a cow somewhere, and so you're like, what does this cow do? And then he's like, well, what if I pull on these? Yeah. What? There's a wet substance coming from. Anyway, and before that, I was thinking it'd be hilarious if we had a cow in the back of Greg's backyard there, and we just all of a sudden you go back and say, "Do you want some milk?" Okay. It's kind of
I remember reading a Gordon Corman. Do you remember Gordon Corman, the author? He had books like
his eyes say
about
no.
Gordon.
What are some of its titles?
Oh man, I'd have to look.
But it brings me back to that question about who first decided we're going to eat stinky cheese? Like that to me blows my mind. Like, oh, look at that mold on that cheese. Let's have some of that. And it smells terrible. Let's try that. Let's have more of it.
Anything that we do, right? Like just in general. How did anything that we do get started?
Ancestrally, I think a lot of it got started for survival, right?
Yeah.
Like you're going to eat the animal nose to tail. You're going to break open the long bones and eat the marrow out of there.
And this horse would look good on a jacket.
What? I don't know.
No, the horse hide was you used to make like apparel, right?
No, that's cowhide.
No, wouldn't horses also? No, I didn't know from that one.
Well, anyway, I want to transition into a whole different type of topic because there's more to you than just talking about food and health and all of that kind of stuff. We haven't actually even touched on some of the supplements and everything like that yet. But I wanted to talk to you about your professional and personal life and a little bit about like how do you manage the demands of your professional life and stay on track in your personal life? Sorry.
Yeah. So it's a good question. I'm happy you asked that about my personal and professional life. Yeah. But at the end of the day, for me, chiropractic and what I do is I don't really separate it much from my personal life. Like it's not just a job.
Mhm.
So for me, it's a lifestyle, the chiropractic lifestyle, and just honoring and respecting the body's innate intelligence and trying to elicit more of the expression of that innate wisdom
Yeah.
in my family and myself. I get adjusted once a week like clockwork, especially lately.
Where do you get adjusted?
So I'm blessed. I have my brother, my
Oh,
sister,
okay,
my
right.
brother-in-law, and a good friend of mine, Sony. Those are the four people that I have work on me
And you'll
on a
go to
regular basis.
their-
I'll go to their offices primarily. Like I used to be more fly by the seat of my pants. Hey, call my brother up in the evening, and it'd be hit and miss. Maybe he's out driving his kids to hockey or something and couldn't get in. So now I'll do that occasionally as an extra adjustment through the week, but mostly I'll actually set up appointments and I'll go into their offices and be a patient or a practice member.
So let me just kind of say it a different way.
Mhm.
We had this discussion last week about balance. You're so passionate
Mhm.
about this subject, and you really are, and I
Mhm.
commend you on that. But a lot of people that are passionate about something tend to spend a lot of time
Mhm.
on their chosen profession. So
Yeah.
they're at the office for 60 hours this week, and wow,
Yeah.
it's been a busy week, and
Yeah.
I wasn't able to see my kids recital,
Yeah.
and I wasn't able to have a date night with my wife,
Yeah.
and I wasn't able to talk to any friends,
Right,
and there can be.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it's in your case,
Mhm.
but there can be an unbalance. And the question I brought a couple weeks ago to our podcast was all the people that did great things. I'm
Mhm.
sure the person that invented penicillin because they were passionate about it, we're
Mhm.
grateful to them. But it seems like all those people that did amazing things were unbalanced.
Mhm.
Right. So when you have really, really busy weeks and you can't get to everything,
Mhm.
are you able to find that balance between family, work, kids, personal life?
So that's my goal. I recently have taken on a new coach, and that's one of his big themes is that you have to have that balance. You can have it all.
Mhm.
So he's like, we don't want to see you be really successful financially, but you're not able to make it to your kid's baseball game or gymnastics meet or things like that. And yet we don't want to see you where you're able to go to the gymnastics meet and you're successful financially, but you're 400 pounds overweight and you're taking time bomb and your health has gone downhill. So his big thing is actually having it all. So having that freedom, and I'm blessed again because the profession I have is not really just a profession, it's a lifestyle. Like so when he says, well, you got to be healthy and fit, well, that's what I promote. That's what yeah, absolutely. Like you're not going to necessarily want to take healthcare advice from a 600-pound nurse who's going to tell you need to exercise more and eat differently. And so yeah, to answer your question, for me, it's my goal. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it in all those areas, but I'm trying to have that perfect balance. Not even balance, but I'm trying to thrive in every single one of those areas.
Yeah.
Plus, you bring your family into your work.
This morning, I just thought, so it's not like I'm in the office that many hours. First of all, there are afternoons where I'm picking up the kids from school and driving them to their activities because I'm not in the office at all in the afternoons, in certain afternoons. And then Saturday mornings, on the other hand, I'm in the office, but I'm there for 2 hours. It's a 2-hour sprint. Like I was telling you, I'm booked solid. I don't come up for air for 2 hours, but I'm interacting with my kids because both my daughters are there as my Saturday assistant. So I have a main assistant who's in the office, who's a university student, and she's there with my two daughters who are 14 and 16. And they're there actually helping out. Like they're working. They're on payroll and they're working. They're actually earning it.
They're learning the systems. And
they're
they're
learning the computer systems. They know that
they're going to get into chiropractic.
My youngest has expressed interest on becoming a chiropractor. My 16-year-old Melania has not expressed interest in that, and it's entirely up to them. I encourage them to do whatever they're passionate about, and they can somehow monetize it along the way. And so
monetize it. You say that word, and I'm actually kind of fits in the next question here. The role of social media within the healthcare business and within the healthcare industry in yours. I saw you posted a video the other day talking about your supplements and stuff like that. How do you find, like, obviously we think of social media as being a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you connect your Instagram and your social media personality,
so it's a good question,
with being something that's good for you?
Right. So it's a good question. So in that way, again, one of my teachers right now is saying exactly that. And this is the way I'm kind of taking it, is that so have someone else. So I have one of my office assistants who's there most of the time. She is in charge of all my Instagram stuff. So she posts everything. I don't even know how to log on to the business account. So I can look at stuff and go, well, that's a cool video you took. Yeah, well, you did a good job editing that. Oh, that's a funny one. So that kind of keeps things a professional level working for me instead of me working for being a slave to the social media. The other thing is I used to have Facebook, and I had both personal Facebook and professional Facebook, and I was connected to that account because I was like earlier on where we first got introduced to social media, and didn't have someone doing it for me. And so I was doing any kind of posts on there. And that was a lot more on a personal level, and just, whatever. And some of it might have been a little bit political, and
it might have given some
ideas of how I was leaning, which direction I was leaning.
You sound, as you speak, and you're talking about how this person does this and this person does this. You sound like a good delegator.
So I'm trying to delegate these things. And so here's the thing. Then I guess my Facebook must have got hacked or something, because both my professional and my personal account were just like gone. I couldn't log in anymore. Couldn't reset anything. Just gone. They're gone. And I asked a few people, hey, try to check out my Facebook. Yeah. So I asked them, like, I try to see what's on my Facebook stuff. And
so is this recent?
They're like, you don't even exist anymore on Facebook land. Oh, I don't know, maybe like half a year ago. Okay. And I should probably be more concerned about it, but I just kind of like, okay, well, maybe that's a sign I just need to get off Facebook, because that was more me on it, and I would tend to surf a little bit more on Facebook, and waste time that way. So so that's gone, and I'll probably have the person who's doing Insta right now. I'll probably have her set up a new account, and that's something I should do. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, and so that's how my social has gone. So I'm not on TikTok
yet.
I should probably be on that too, but again, I'll have my
dances to do with your friends.
Oh, I'll do the dances for sure.
We look at these tools like social media and everything like that, like, they could be bad things, right?
Yeah.
But we can also have social media as good things,
yeah.
right? So essentially, like, everything in the world, I'm going to get a little philosophical, faith-based here for a second. Everything in the world we should look at as something like God's brought into this world, right? Like, a TV is in this world because somebody who was created by God created a television, used their brain, their innate talents to create a television, created these microphones, created the cell phones and all that kind of stuff, right? It's up to us as human beings to utilize them in a proper way.
Yeah, as a tool that serves us as opposed to being a slave to it.
Exactly. So like you putting something out onto there saying, hey, if you use these, this will help XYZ for your body, right? You're using social media as a tool to help people as opposed to you're not on social media to do a TikTok dance.
Right.
Right. And that
and just get some likes.
Still do.
Yeah, we'll get them to do a TikTok dance after this.
Or to just scroll indiscriminately for like hours on end and just being hypnotized.
Yeah, and you can
wasting time, right?
Like some churches will say, like, we use social media so that we can present the church and we can present faith and we can present like worship music and all that kind of stuff, right? So you can't look at it as the devil's tool. You have to look at it as this is something made by somebody who was made by God.
Right.
So
I agree.
That type of thing, right? So I just wanted to get a little bit of...
Yeah, it's going back to like the gun. The gun can be used for good and a gun can be used for bad, right? And we see examples from history. I have a question about, I don't know if we talked about this before, but sleep. How much sleep do you get at night? And talk about the importance of our diet and getting enough sleep and how important sleep is in general and what kind of sleep we need to be getting so that we're refreshed and mentally aware of the next day and efficiency and all that stuff.
So it turns out, I didn't know this question was coming, so I don't have like specific statistics on the top of my head, but it turns out that's one of the biggest levers that you can push or pull. Exercise is one of the biggest ones. Actually, if you want me to prioritize, there's 3 really big levers that you can push and pull other than nutrition. Okay. So nutrition might be number 4, but number 1 is optimizing the function of your central nervous system, which is through the work that I do through the adjustments of the spine, we're optimizing your central nervous system. If that's not optimized, there's no way that you will ever be at your best. Doesn't mean you can't be great. It doesn't mean you can't be even amazing at things and at life and at health, but you're not going to be at your best. So it's like you're not firing on all cylinders. Well, you might have a big whatever V12 that's working really well on 10 cylinders. It still works better than most other vehicles, but it's still not maxed out in terms of how good it can be.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's top priority. Second lever that you can pull is exercise.
Okay.
So apparently, according to some of the latest research, apparently there's no bad habits that you can do that are as bad as not exercising. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Did I say that in a clear way?
Yep.
So there's no bad habits that you can do that are as bad as not exercising. So exercise, both cardiovascular exercise, what they call zone 2, and really heavy lifting, resistance training, building lean muscle mass are two of the biggest predictors of longevity.
And heart disease, right?
Well, longevity in general, not
Yeah.
just heart disease. Heart
Okay.
disease is a big one because that's one of the biggest killers, right?
Yeah.
But in general. And when asked why, well, is it heart disease? Well, that's one of the things. But when someone poses the question, well, why lean muscle mass? Why does extra lean muscle mass help you live longer? So there's a couple of answers to that, but one of them is back to blood sugar regulation. That's such a huge rampant thing these days, type 2 diabetes. Having lean muscle mass is how you dispose of and utilize glucose.
Mhm.
And so being able to store proper amounts of glycogen, being able to have that insulin sensitivity by having a large amount of lean muscle mass is a big deal. And on the other end of it, cardiovascular exercise, which again, I've kind of come full circle there too. Or as I went through a period, I was like, cardio is terrible waste of time. It's awful. Certain types of cardio I still disagree with, unless you're dedicated to a certain sport and you have to do that type of cardio. But what they call zone 2 cardio, which is very kind of it's not moderate. It's somewhat relatively slow paced cardio. I guess you could say it's conversational pace in terms
You
of
talk
like,
while doing it.
yeah, you can sustain a conversation while doing it. Person listening to you on the other end might hear you a little bit out of breath, but you can still hold a full conversation, and you could go on for a long, long time.
I talked to my full marathon. I talked to people for half the time. So
Okay.
That's
Cool.
pretty interesting. I wouldn't be able to do that.
That's full marathon. So that's a lot. So, so the thing is,
And we have a trophy for Tim.
well, I haven't had my water. My water is full.
So how long was your full marathon?
26.1.
How time? What was your
miles.
time?
Oh, I wasn't that fast. It was like 4 hours and 27
Okay,
minutes.
so you probably kept it at a conversational pace, which is good.
Yeah,
because
not fast.
what we see is there's a lot of people, like you'll see people say in a spin class, and they're doing like a long spin class, and they might be in their 40s or 50s doing a long spin class where they're no longer in zone 2, so they're breaching what we call the lactate threshold. And once you've reached that lactate threshold, you're utilizing other energy pathways in the body that require glucose now,
right,
for energy. And so after the first 20-ish minutes on that spin bike where you're sweating bullets and you're pushing beyond that lactate threshold, you're pushing beyond the conversational pace, yet you're not sprinting, because you couldn't sprint for 20 minutes or for an hour and a half that these classes might be. So what happens is you're in that moderate range.
Okay.
And when you're at moderate range, exceeding 20 minutes in that moderate range, now your body's used up most of its glycogen stores, its short-term fuel supply, short-term sugar supply, to put it simply. And it's no longer in that sort of aerobic phase of energy. So it's no longer in fat burning energy. It's in sugar burning. And so where is it going to find sugar once you've used up your short-term fuel sugar supply? What can it turn into sugar? It's going to turn your lean muscle mass into sugar, basically. So you're going to liquefy lean muscle mass for the rest of the hour and 10 minutes that you're pushing it real hard on that spin bike.
Yeah.
Can you get that back if you?
Well, here's the thing: it takes a long time to get that back. A lot longer to get. It's a lot shorter and easier to liquefy it and turn it into sugar than it is to get it back. Especially at 40 and 50 and beyond years old, which we see a lot of people in those decades of life joining these spin classes, and they're pushing it hard, and they're not getting enough growth hormone spike and testosterone spike from that hard workout, because they're not going quite hard enough, and yet they're not slow enough to be in fat burning mode. So they're really doing stuff that's contrary.
Are you saying that it's better for someone to do absolutely nothing?
No, I'm saying the studies are showing this. The studies are showing that people who are doing their cardio are doing it too long and too intensely.
Right.
and they're not doing it slow enough. And it's hard to do because, I mean, you would do a run at zone 2 and you'd think like, oh man, I'm not doing anything. I could go harder than this and it'll be more effective. Well, it's not necessarily going to achieve the result that
I'm safe there.
you're looking for.
So my power lifting class I did with my wife this
Yeah.
morning for 60 minutes. That was really good.
Well, 60 minutes. So yeah, you were lifting heavy weights?
Yeah, like we would do like the barbell,
Yeah.
we'd put it down, and then we do some steps here, and then we take the thing and we
Yeah, so heavy. So that's the other thing. The other end of it is either heavy resistance training, where you're building the muscle mass, and you're gonna spike growth hormone and testosterone doing that as well,
Yeah.
and some sprint interval training or high intensity.
the hits.
Yeah,
right?
hit or even higher than hit would be sprint intervals,
Yeah.
where you're only doing a few intervals,
Yeah.
and they're only lasting a short period of time, like 20 to 30 seconds. Those sprints. So it's not like 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 10 seconds on, 10 seconds off. That's for like 20 minutes or a half an hour. That's still not gonna do it because it's not quite intense enough, according to the literature, to spike the growth hormone and testosterone.
Before we keep going into it, we got the top 2 right now. What's the third?
So yeah, I'm going too deep into the exercise one, but just can I nutshell it though?
Yep.
The nutshell with exercise is people need to do usually slower cardio than what they think is going to benefit them. So walking is actually good for you, and a slow-paced jog for a short period of time is actually good for you, good for your mitochondrial health. And then they're not going hard enough on their sprints, and they're going too long. They figure, I got to do like 30 sprints. Well, you're no longer sprinting after your first 3
So me
sprints.
doing the slow jogging in Central Park in New York and having everyone pass me going way faster.
Perfect.
I'm way better than
You
them.
get the last laugh. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll live longer than them. So when
If
they're
you ever want to
dead,
feel slow,
It depends on the-
running, go to Central Park.
And again,
Yeah.
it depends on the individual. Like you might have a seasoned professional runner whose zone 2 is like
Oh yeah, it's
my
it's
sprint.
different, Yeah.
Central
I mean,
Park
I don't
story, I took a bike in Central Park and I drove a bike through Central Park, and it was beside a guy that was running at one point.
Yeah.
So I was like biking at his speed that he was running.
I've
Just wait,
seen those
just let me
guys.
finish
Yes.
my story.
Yes.
Yeah. So
It's a fascinating story.
I was biking beside him and he was running, and I go to him, I'm like, hey, want to race? And he goes, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And he starts sprinting. And I was biking and I was just staying pace with him. Like
Yeah.
I knew I could go faster than
Yeah.
him running, right?
Yeah.
But I was keeping pace with him at his sprint. And I made him sprint probably for like a mile and a half.
wow.
And then I biked. Then I actually sped up on the
Yeah.
bike and I pulled away from him. And then my buddy who was riding with me, he goes, you just ruined that entire guy's day.
No, I
Not
don't-
really.
no,
I mean,
I don't
he-
think so. I think he
he
would
lasted a mile and a
I think he
half.
would have loved it.
No, but he said like you ruined his cadence. And
Oh,
you
his
ruined
yeah,
his
yeah.
pace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now
Yeah.
now he just went all out for
Yeah.
like a mile and a half.
Yeah.
And he would have probably like done like a 25-mile run,
Right,
but
right,
now
right.
he's
Yeah.
only going to do
Yeah.
like a 20-mile run or whatever,
He will
right?
love the competition, though.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's why he did it. He
Yeah.
loved the
So
competition.
can we go back to the answer? The original question was sleep.
Yeah.
How much
So then
sleep-
that's the third lever.
'Kay.
Is sleep very, very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much sleep do I get? Let's see. So about 7 hours.
Yeah, so you're kind of you're
So 11 to 6.
Yeah. That ballpark.
That's what I'm sleeping right now.
Yeah.
And I used to sleep 11 to 7:30.
Uh-huh.
But I've now I got a new job. I'm doing some different work. I'm getting up earlier. I'm generally sleeping about 7 hours a night.
Okay.
So that's
And
good.
that's, yeah. I mean, so statistically 8 hours,
Yeah.
7-8 hours, but there's studies also that show that sleeping more isn't necessarily better.
and
but sleeping
as you
less-
said earlier, everyone's different. So
Yeah.
the same person that's used to
Sort of.
cardio range.
Yeah.
Some people
There's a
can
general
their
range,
per-
which is-
can get away with less.
Yeah.
Right. The I was also going to ask, and now I'm completely blanking.
So getting up at the same time every morning is very important.
Yep.
Even
Why?
if you go to bed at a different
Why is
time,
it-
it's
why
just
is
to
it
set
very
your circadian, your rhythm,
Okay.
and the regulation of your central nervous system. And then
Yeah.
Huberman talks about a lot about this. Getting up at the same time in the morning and exposing yourself to full spectrum sunlight as much as possible, first thing as early as possible in the morning. It's hard here because
And not blue
Yeah.
light.
If somebody asks
not
you,
just blue light, full
Like
spectrum.
actual
Like you
sunlight.
can't beat sure those happy lights that tend to help people's mood if they're on early in the day, but it's still hard on the eyes and it's still not ideal. It's hard on the macula, especially if it's unopposed blue light. So that's the key there is you can't beat the full spectrum of daylight even on an overcast day.
if
You
somebody
can't beat that
if
full
somebody
spectrum.
asks you to there's a big need for a chiropractor in Alaska,
Mhm.
where we talked about this last episode. They're going 65 days without seeing the sun once,
Hmm.
and you have to spend
Yeah, that'd be hard.
a couple of months there
Yeah.
dealing with people, and you have no sunlight at all.
Yeah.
Could you do it?
Could I do it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I could do it. It's not, I mean, I can do a lot of things that I set my mind to. Like we talked about doing hard things last time when we did the cold immersion. Like and after we did that, I got really dedicated and got into the really cold. Like I had my cold plunge in my garage during the winter.
Yeah, I heard you did that.
So I had to use a trough heater. A friend of mine gave me the idea to put a trough heater in there so that it prevents it from becoming a solid block of ice. Yeah. So I put a trough heater with a timer for half an hour, sometimes 2 half-hour periods, depending on how cold the night would be. And then I'd still have to break through it with a hockey stick the next day. And so that's hard. So I'm no stranger, and I try not to shy away from difficult things. So that I would consider a difficult thing, but
not ideal.
Not ideal, no.
Talk a little bit about seasonal. Why do some people, and maybe you're not an expert on this, I apologize if you can't keep that.
I'm not an expert on most of these things we talked about today, just disclaimer, especially the political stuff.
Yeah.
But
we'll have an official disclaimer.
I happen to be really good at allowing for optimal expression of your body's innate intelligence.
Why do some people have a worse issue with seasonal disorders as far as seasonal effectiveness? Why do some people have an issue when you don't have as much sunlight and other people
don't?
Yeah,
that's a good question. So my first go-to idea with that is, let me work with them and optimize their central nervous system. Because what happens is things get dysregulated. Like Huberman talks about dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system, especially with interruptions in regular light exposure, whether you're on your screen late at night and then not getting sunlight in the morning, getting up at different times in the morning. Those are all things that can dysregulate your central nervous system. Other forms of stress can dysregulate the central nervous system. How your body adapts to stress. So those are all stresses on the central nervous system. How your body adapts to stress is what I can help people with. Yeah. So my first go-to to answer that question is, let's see what happens when I optimize the functioning of their central nervous system, and done repeatedly enough over time. Often that changes, regardless of their circumstances in the environment.
You can't affect the environment. Might as well try to do as much as you can to affect
exactly. You can't. I'm not interested. So chiropractic in general, the old school philosophy in chiropractic is we're not so interested in controlling your environment, but controlling how your body adapts to your environment.
So, Dr. Dan, you have brought your table here, for us, and Tim doesn't really understand what you do.
They never said that.
He doesn't.
Well, he didn't say it directly, but you expressed it. What you think I do, and I'll maybe hopefully shed some more light.
The torture thing that stretches. You have the big stretcher thing, and I go like, really?
Exactly.
But just even to speak to that, just in general, you've often alluded to, you're gonna crack your spine and those types of, and really chiropractors, whether there's an audible sound that comes out of the spine or not, doesn't necessarily mean an adjustment was made or not. So I'm no stranger to adjusting the spine structurally, manually with my hands, where you feel an audible release. Absolutely. I do that on a daily basis, but I also primarily like to make sure that the central nervous system is optimally functioning. And that sometimes involves a structural type of chiropractic adjustment. Sometimes it involves very light contacts along the spine, particularly at both ends of the spine where the spinal cord is attached very strongly, which elicits changes on the inside neurologically. And then the body tends to self-regulate its own tension patterns.
Yeah. So we're gonna show Tim getting
vagus nerve
an adjustment, and we'll talk a little bit about that while we're doing that. Okay, so right now, while he's on the table, just starting out, what kinds of things are you doing?
Okay, so I was just asking Tim a few questions about his history so we can do a proper assessment, proper history. I'm going to go ahead and do my actual physical assessment right now, and then we'll get started. So if you have any questions or if I find anything interesting that I will share, I'll go ahead and share stuff with you guys.
Sounds good. I'm going to get out of the way here.
Okay, so Tim's had some work done before. We're gonna have a different approach here. I'm gonna do my assessment first, and if you're wondering, Tim, why I'm looking down here at your legs and your feet, this gives me an idea of what's happening in the spinal cord. So the spinal cord anatomically is attached very strongly at the top of the spine. So it comes out of the brain, attaches very strongly at the top of the spine, and down here at the bottom of the spine near the tailbone, the sacrum and coccyx. So it's like two ends of a puppet string, literally. And it kind of floats in between. And so most of my adjustments will consist of some very light force applications at the top and or bottom of the spine. Just like pulling on a puppet string, you can hold a contact at one end and things might unravel or change all the way up at the other end and vice versa. And what we know and what studies show is that any pressure on the nerves at one end of the spine can produce up to 20-fold more pressure at the opposite end through the leveraging of it, like using a crowbar, where you put a little bit of pressure at one end and you can lift a 1,000-pound boulder at the other end. So with that said, I'm going to use very light force applications, even though Tim's used to some more structural adjustments where the bone is moved for you. I'm going to start out by doing my assessment and then using some really light force applications to get his body to start recognizing what it needs to do from the inside. With that, we might see changes in breathing. We might see changes in muscle tension. We might see some waves comes through the spine, which helps to a subtle undulation that comes through the spine that helps to dissipate tension and move energy through the system more effectively. So I may give you a few instructions at times, Tim, but I won't say much while I'm working on you. So let me just finish my assessment here. I just wanted to review why I'm going down to your feet. So I've already palpated your spine, done that part of my assessment. And then as I go down to the legs, that's how I'm going to assess. I can't reach into your spine and see what the spinal cord is doing, obviously. So I'm going to look at criteria down at the feet. So again, back to that puppet string analogy, it's like a giant puppet string. Here's the main puppet string, and then there's branches that come down all the way down, so I can tell what's happening through the spinal cord all the way down at the feet and ankles.
So do people's treatments typically like last a long time, or does it just last like a day or two?
So I'm happy you asked me that, Tim. My goal is to have sustainable changes happen in your central nervous system and your structure. And so, yes, so long story short is yes, we're looking for long-term changes, kind of like writing a book where you might write a chapter and then you save your work. At the end of the day, you go back to your computer a couple days later and you pick up where you left off. So the whole thing, so you continue to move forward. Or like learning an instrument, you learn to play it, and then every time you sit at that instrument, you play it with more subtle nuances and more depth every single time. That's what I'm looking for with optimizing your central nervous system function. We're looking at interrupting old holding patterns, if you will, that your body's been in, instead of just forcing it to move. And then you come back next week and it's the same old pattern, and we'll force it to move, and you'll have benefits from that, of course. But I'd like to see that we can interrupt that pattern completely. And with repetition, with enough frequency and repetition, we can make that change and create just a more and more energy efficient system along the way. So I'm happy you asked that, Tim. Okay, so Tim, I just went ahead and did a chiropractic adjustment on you. Probably 90% of the adjustment was very, very light force application, which I guess is relatively new for you, first time ever having that experience. And then you're no stranger to structural adjustments, which you've had in the past or very recently. And so I did one extra small force application into your cervical spine, into your neck, which created more of a structural application type of adjustment. And you felt sort of a release there, obviously. But tell me more about the rest of your experience through the adjustment.
I'm not sure what you mean by small, because when you did that,
it was deep, right?
It was deep. It kind of sometimes I'll get my neck, whatever you call it, adjusted, and you'll just see one part. You'll feel one part here, another. The entire neck.
It felt like there was a lot of depth, right?
Neck went deep, and when you did that, was one thing that I noticed. All of the other, like as you say, the first touch you made was above here in my neck. You barely touched it, and then small little things here and there. So I'm thinking in my brain, how could this have any?
How could it be doing anything, right?
All you're doing is barely tapping it. So
yeah.
I mean, my brain that always questions things like, oh, how could this possibly have any kind of a reaction at all? But you had said on the table that there was you were seeing some changes, which again I couldn't see what you were seeing, but.
And in the end, I invited you to sit up. You're like, "Oh, I'm denying that invitation." Because what did you mean by that? You felt pretty chill.
I was just making a joke.
But you seemed like you felt pretty chill.
Yeah. So, but yeah, what did you notice when you were?
So you did great. The thing is, I get that often where a person will sit up and go, "Well, you barely touched me." Yeah. I'm not even sure if you were doing anything, right? Yeah. But then you felt that one particular specific structural adjustment, boom, with depth, right? Yeah. And you were saying that maybe even more depth than what you're used to. but I didn't force anything to move.
Right.
It's just through just speed and precision. It moved beautifully and effortlessly.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when we set the stage and the spinal cord was in a very, very supple, relaxed state. So then if I did choose, which I did this time, to do a structural application, it was just effortless.
So all
It
the
was
other
like
touches that
honoring.
you make it, get it ready for the finale.
Basically, which I didn't need to do that finale. I just did that because you're used to
You
getting
didn't need to at all.
No, I didn't need to. I could have said to Tim, sit up on the table, and then the body would have continued to work on things on the inside, and it will
Right.
still will.
Yeah.
Your body will continue to work on things on the inside innately for the next day or two. And I always warn people on their first visit, your
Yeah.
body's going to keep working on stuff. And when I say working on stuff, usually they'll wake up the next morning with a greater sense of ease. But 1 out of 10 times, a person will come back their second visit and they'll say, oh, I felt nice and relaxed that whole day. It was great. The next morning, I felt like I ran a marathon. What'd you do to me? So they're feeling stuff they haven't felt in a while.
Right.
So don't be alarmed if you do feel that. It means we're waking things up in your body neurologically. And it's kind of like after doing a big workout, you're waking up muscle groups you haven't used in a while. So sometimes people do get that feeling. Other feelings. So that's on a physical level.
Yeah.
I've had people. I had one case in particular. I'm not sure if I shared with you guys this testimonial on the last podcast or not, but I worked on her and just light force applications like what I did to you. Told her the same thing, see what happens, let your body work on things overnight and then come see me again the next day or in a couple of days. She comes back on her second visit and she says, I didn't share this with you. But she says she's had chronic constipation for 20 years. One bowel movement every 5 days, she says, was her normal standard routine.
Yeah.
And she said, I tried everything from suppositories to laxatives to everything, prune juice, you name it. She's tried it and nothing. She said, I just accepted that's what it was. And I even tell you about it on our first visit. You worked on me, barely touched me. That afternoon had four separate bowel movements, solid formed stools.
What did you work on?
I worked on optimizing her central nervous system. I didn't know she had
So
bowel.
in generalities, you didn't actually work on it.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing about chiropractic is it has broad implications. Yeah. All I'm focused. So I ask people about their symptoms occasionally. That's the first thing I ask about. It's also it's kind of cliche, but it's the first thing I try to forget about because I don't want to be skewed by your symptoms and focus in like a medical doctor would to try and fix your symptoms. Because that would take me away from what I'm really trying to do often. Often that's like a red herring or a smoke screen. And we want to not be misled by the symptoms. We want to take it into account, obviously, but we don't want to be misled by that. All I want to do is let me see where I can free up more expression of innate intelligence in you and then let nature take its course. So one of my mentors often says, let me see if I can phrase it properly. He says, all I want to do is allow for greater expression of innate intelligence. Whatever happens after that is none of my business. In other words, you might feel rough the next day. You might feel great the next day. You might have a great sleep. You might have a restless sleep. Your body innately is doing what it needs to do for you to be optimized.
I need to feel great tomorrow. I have a busy day. So I need you to promise that. Write it down.
I guarantee. I have a guarantee.
Right. Yeah.
I have a guarantee that if I work on you regularly, you're not going to say at the end of your life, darn, I wish I hadn't had my spine and nerve system optimized once a week by Dr. Dan. Yeah. I wish I hadn't had spent time with him. He's such a negative influence on my life and on my nervous system. You're not going to say that. I can guarantee you're not going to say that at the end of the day.
What's regularly? Like how often should you go?
I'm happy you asked that. In the beginning, we see people more frequently, 2 to 3 times a week is what we'll see for several weeks in order to interrupt the old patterns. We know it takes a minimum of 3 months to interrupt an old pattern and then start to establish a new one and healthier strategies in the system. So again, there's a whole bunch of variables when it comes to the beginning of care, the health of your current spine, your current stress.
You get it back to where you were happy with their patterns.
But here's the thing. Once we get you back, my goal is not to get you back to where you were before the symptoms interrupted your life. Right. My goal is to get you way beyond that. So it's like we're upgrading from your iOS device to an Apple device. We're making an upgrade.
No, I am not getting rid of my Android. I'm going to another Android.
But besides that, my goal is to get you beyond that. So when we used to talk about maintenance care, it's not maintenance. You're never maintaining anything. Your relationships, anything in life, if you're maintaining, you're going downhill. If you're coasting, you're going down.
Getting better.
You're either getting better or getting worse.
Get better and better.
That's right. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're not coasting. No. So my goal, even when you're in a wellness protocol, once we've done the initial stages of care where there's higher frequency, my goal is to continue to improve the system. It's like we're continuously upgrading your operating system. And so that consists of, again, many variables depending on the individuals and their lifestyle, but anywhere from once a week to once every 2 weeks. Do I ever recommend longer than 2 weeks between visits? I don't. Is there times where it has to happen because people are traveling or they're out of town or they have other commitments? I work on pro athletes and other sort of influential people who have other commitments and flying around. So I might not see them once every 2 weeks. I might see them longer spaced out in between, or I might see them 2 or 3 times in a day because they're only in town once a month. And we'll make some really good progress in that one day. But ultimately, we use the 2 weeks because what studies show and what we've learned is that if you stay subluxated and your spine stays distorted in a certain pattern, a certain holding pattern for more than 2 weeks, it takes more work to interrupt that pattern.
Yep.
So we don't want to have to do more work. So you're not saving anything by coming. You're not saving time or money by spacing out your visits once every 2 months.
Yep.
It's just going to take us more work to get things turned around.
True or false? I only have to go once every month or two because I'm getting regular massages.
Yeah, so massages are fine. They have a certain goal in mind. They're not going to do what we're doing. I'm not going to do what a massage therapist is doing. So it goes back to what I just explained to you, how what we know and what studies show is that more than 15 days without an adjustment, doesn't matter what other modalities you're doing.
Yeah.
If there's a holding pattern in your central nervous system, you're going to need to get it adjusted. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dan, for getting me on your table. It was an experience and I really enjoyed it. And you'll be hearing from me tomorrow if it all goes badly.
Sounds good. I hope to hear from you if it goes well.
Just kidding.
I used to, on that note, I used to, expect, some good outcomes. And then I started seeing more and more miraculous cases coming in. And so now when I open that door, like I'm walking up to the office this morning and you can call my daughters right now, ask them if I said this. We're leaving the truck and we're heading towards my office first thing this morning. I'm like, what kind of miracles are we going to experience today? What kind of miracles are we going to witness in people today? What kind of transformations are we going to see happen today? Not are we going to see transformation and miracles? What kind of miracles? I wonder. I'm curious every day because I see it happening on a daily basis. I see these things happening. So I expect it. I've come to expect transformational changes in people, and I expect it for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
So now that we've done the chiropractic stuff and shown a little bit about what Dr. Dan does, we want to have a little fun to end the episode. And last time you came on you were our first in-person guest. So we didn't have a lot of a format. We were just kind of like flying by the seat of our pants. But we've since then created a format where we have a couple questions that we like to finish off our guests with. But we also have a segment called This or That. And This or That is essentially a segment where you pick something. When we give you a choice, you have to pick one or the other. You cannot pass. You cannot say none. You have to pick one or the other. And the other one disappears forever from your life.
Okay.
It's as if we can control the universe right now.
Yeah.
And we would
destroy
the other thing and it no longer exists. So that's how you have to pick the this or that. So we're going to give you a few here. Ready?
All right. I'm ready.
You want to go first or do you want to go all?
Instagram or TikTok?
Which one I would keep or which one I would get rid of?
Which one?
Which one you keep?
Oh, Instagram.
Eating healthy or working out?
Working out. I just told you guys working out's a stronger lever. They're both important, but
Is
working
it
out.
lever or lever?
Lever, lover.
Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
And DeLuca's was your go-to, right? Okay.
The Lucas pizza.
Cold plunge on a hot day or hot tub on a cold day? Remember, the other one goes away forever. You can't only have one.
Cold plunge on a hot day.
Right? Yeah. Family Guy or The Simpsons?
Mm-hmm.
The Simpsons. Never seen Family Guy.
Okay. Family Guy's pretty funny. Only for coffee? You drink coffee?
Decaf occasionally.
Okay.
We can skip that one.
Skip it. Netflix or Disney Plus?
Netflix.
Okay. Would you rather climb a mountain or sit your butt on a beach?
I like the beach. I'd climb a mountain.
Okay, I'm with you. We can go later on next week. Chocolate or chips?
Chips.
Watching sports or watching reality TV?
Sports.
Do you watch both?
I don't really watch either. I play sports. But I don't. So that's why I went for sports
Can you
because
talk about
I
which
could
sports-
get into
Did we
sports.
talk about which sports you play?
I kite surf. I used to kite surf more. I used to play hockey twice a week, but it's just less these days. I mountain bike these days. Yeah, a lot more mountain biking
Cool.
because
There
I
you
don't
go.
have to wait for the wind to come
What's your
up.
favorite trail? In
Usually the ones around Grand Beach. There's some in Grand Beach, some in Grand Marais, and one called Rubens. So those are all close to my cottage area. So I have a good friend who takes me through there, and they're nice sort of
Awesome.
trails for Manitoba.
fun. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Because it's right.
Well, you can't be right everywhere. Superhero ability. Would you rather be invisible or be able to fly?
Fly.
All right.
Why? Why do people pick fly?
Everyone picks flying. He likes invisibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can sneak into sporting events. You can sneak into concerts. You can do
Yeah.
everything being invisible. I don't know.
And no one
Flying would be
knows
cool,
who you
but
are.
I would pick invisibility. But anyway,
Chicks dig the flying aspect. Travel back in time 100 years or 100 years into the future.
I think future.
Yeah.
Yeah, see what's happening back going forward.
no, he wants to bet on the sports.
But I can't come back,
Yeah.
right?
No, you can travel.
Oh, you can
like
come
you
back.
can either travel 100 years into the
Okay.
past
Can
or
you
to the
come- yeah,
future.
that's a good
Well, if that's the
question.
case, then I would definitely go past because I can tamper with the past and affect the future.
No, that's the
Back to the
space-time
future.
continuum. You can't do that.
It
Dr.
creates a
told
paradox.
The Mandela effect is real. It's Bernstein, not Bernstein. Shazam is real.
Oh, yes, please no. For the love of everything
Okay,
holy.
Tim has a couple fun questions he likes to ask at the end of every episode.
Oh, they're fun.
They're fun. They're just easygoing.
All right,
let's do
Just
it.
to kind of get your personality.
Yeah.
They're personality test questions.
Okay.
So date nights with your wife.
Mhm.
The 3 top places. They can be restaurants. They can be places to go and enjoy. What are your top 3 go-to for date night?
For sure, top 1 is Bellissimo's restaurant.
Okay.
That's her favorite. And that's just like our main go-to. That's our main date. Yeah, Bellissimo's I'd say 3 times. 'cause
Okay.
So
that's-
Bellissimo closes down
Yeah.
tomorrow.
You're done.
They're
well,
done.
then the second go-to would be Hearth, which is also both her
Hearth?
brother's restaurants.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And then Hearth has closed down as well
from there, I guess we
due
go to the
to
keg or
lack of
something, I don't
Dr.
know.
Dan coming. 'cause
You
we
don't
went
have to
Bellissimo.
pick a restaurant.
No,
You
but
can pick
that's-
anything to do.
That's
in
those,
Manitoba.
Those
Top.
those are things.
Okay, and that's. I have another question, but before that, I wanted to ask another question. It's kind of fun. When I'm sure there's some days where you come back home and you're like, "That was a stressful day." What's your go-to stress reliever of something to do or go just to kind of get the edge off a little bit?
So if it's a half day, then I head straight to the gym.
Okay.
Because that's when I do my workout in the afternoon. So I do it on my lunch break, or if it's a half day in the afternoon. That would be my definite go-to. I have jumped. We talked about the cold immersion. I have jumped into the cold for probably my record time.
You
but
find
I
that
was
stress relieving?
I was
it is.
pissed off. I was angry. I think I was pissed. Maybe I had an argument with my wife or something, and I was like, "That's it.
That's
Clothes
it. I'm
comes
getting
off. I'm going
naked.
in there, and maybe I'll freeze in there." And then I went in there, and it's yeah,
It is a stress
yeah.
reliever.
If you have adrenaline going through your body
Right.
and you're
Does
upset,
it shock you?
It's
Are you
shocking,
meaning to
but
shock your system? Is that what you're doing?
It's shocking. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
To reset? Are you resetting
yeah.
yourself?
Oh yeah.
'Kay.
Yeah, that was a good reason.
I
I did
can-
that once.
I can-
I can remember that. I was
Okay,
did it in that state while
That
in that
means he
state.
only had an argument with his wife.
That's right. That
Yeah.
one time that I argued with my wife,
Yeah.
went in there and everything was good and we were happy again.
He thought he was right.
Marriage advice with Dr. Dan. One person, dead or alive, historical, anyone you want,
Uh-huh.
that you can choose to have one 20-minute conversation with today. Who is that person?
Jesus.
And the other rule is in this fine print of the contracts, you cannot pick.
Oh,
and
come
the,
on.
and-
I
and
said
the
it
reason-
before.
The reason is Jesus is with you all the time,
Okay.
and that is the reason you must.
But
pick
we
somebody
do
else.
understand. That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be obviously amazing to speak with him and to walk with him, right?
Okay. Then
So-
I would love to speak to either Dee or BJ. So Dee Palmer was the discoverer of chiropractic.
Yeah.
I think I would sit with him. He was different than his son BJ. BJ was the developer of chiropractic. He took it from his dad after his dad passed away, or while his dad was still alive, and he continued to research and develop it.
Didn't they have a falling out?
They
I read
did.
they had a falling out.
They did, yeah. They did. Yeah. The history is absolutely amazing with Dee and BJ Palmer. Dee was the father, and he was a sort of a healer in this building. And that's where he met the guy who became deaf. And he adjusted him, regained his hearing. The second case was a heart issue, and back then, that's what the point I was trying to make. Back then the heart issues weren't necessarily atherosclerosis, not very often anyway, because they didn't eat the same way we eat now. So it was like electrical issues. So again, by optimizing their, so I think I would sit with Dee Palmer. He was like a fascinating character, very quirky, very different, and his son is also someone I would be fascinated to sit with.
Yeah, those are good answers.
Yeah.
And you said Jesus first. I think that probably 70% of our guests have picked.
So you don't give them the disclaimer.
Or yeah, exactly.
Or the fine print.
Or they pick a loved one that's passed that they want to speak.
Most
that they think
of the time, actually,
they're
been a
picking loved
parent or
ones.
something
Okay.
like that, yeah.
Okay.
So last question of the episode, the one that's sometimes the hardest, sometimes the easiest, depending on how you look at it. What is one piece of advice that you would give someone that is trying to change their habits currently?
So don't be too hard on yourself when you fall off the wagon. So, for example, an alcoholic hasn't drank in a month and he's pretty happy that he hasn't. He's been on the wagon, as they say. And then he goes on a binge and he drinks all night. And then the next morning, he fell off the wagon. Next morning, you would think that the hangover, the physical hangover and the moral hangover would be enough to say, well, I'm not going to do that ever again because it feels really bad physically and it feels really bad on my conscience.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out the harder he is on himself, the more likely he is to throw in the towel and say, well, I'm a loser anyway. I might as well just keep doing that bad habit. I might as well go out drinking again tonight. So there's studies that show that compassion for yourself. And again, this is fine line between that and enabling. You don't want enabling, go, oh, well, okay, I can have a little bit of alcohol. Okay, I can go out drinking once a week. No. You still need to be disciplined, but not being too hard on yourself if and when you do fall off the wagon, bang, get right back. Don't dwell on that. Get right back on the wagon.
Yeah.
Like my
basically forgive yourself fast.
Yeah.
Fast forgiveness and then get
right back on track. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Reminds me of the story, he without sin cast the first stone, but go and sin no more. They were said in the same line, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Fantastic. Anyways, thanks for watching today. Don't forget, I don't know if we said this yet, like, subscribe, share, comment. We've linked all of Dr. Dan's contact information below, and let us know what you think of the comments or of the statements and stuff that have been made. Again, disclaimer, Dr. Dan, you're speaking from research that you've done. You're speaking from stuff that you've learned.
Also experience.
Some of the items you're not an expert on, but it is good to learn and to continuously, and that's why we have you on here, is because it's a learning process. And if we don't have somebody like yourself on, we can't learn these things to even go and look at them up ourselves.
Well, it's a conversation. It would be like if you were to have a conversation with anybody in your living room, and certainly everything I said was correct. But we,
so we dove into some topics that I'm not necessarily, like you said, that I may be passionate about, but I'm not an expert on. I geek out on health and wellness stuff, and some of the stuff is from experience as well, because I see hundreds of people coming through my office on a weekly basis, and I'm observing these things. I'm observing these phenomenons.
Yeah.
Do you ever say why the drink we drank at the beginning was good for me? Did we explain that to me?
No, I don't think we went into any details. So
I
I
was
used
thinking
to
of the
do
whole thing.
I used to do a shot. I haven't done opposite cider in a little while, but I used to do a shot of it after a meal. It's good for digestion, thins the
Okay.
bile out, helps digestion of fats particularly. Also helps metabolism of blood sugar. Apparently, again, you can fact check me on this or if you want, but it's it can blunt the blood sugar spike after a big meal, especially if it's a heavy carbohydrate meal. It can blunt the blood sugar spike in post meal.
Will it help the Jamba Juice I had at like 11:30 last night digest?
And the other thing too is I put cayenne in there as well, and the cayenne is supposed to do something also for your. Is it for your digestion or is it for your blood sugar?
Yeah, so cayenne, both of the above. I mean,
Okay.
cayenne has multiple, again, reports of multiple uses for cayenne.
Yeah.
Particularly cayenne, not just any hot pepper, but
The
particularly
cayenne pepper.
Yeah.
So,
And just to be clear, I did win that competition.
and Tim did win, and who? Well, off camera. Yeah.
The three of us.
Anyways,
I
out of
won.
the three that were on camera, Tim won. Anyways, thanks for watching the Greg and Tim show today. We appreciate it. And like, subscribe, share, all those fun things. And Tim, we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching. Again, thanks for joining us, Dr. Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, fellas.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with all your friends. Sharing is caring.